What is up, college sports fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Coos. Welcome to yet another edition of Coos' Corner, where you come in, relax, chill out, be yourself, and let me pull you out some top shelf college sports content. In this episode, I'm going to be chatting with Mr. David Smoak from Sic'Em 365 and 365 Sports. Covers the Baylor Bears. Most of you probably know Mr. Smoak. He's very well known in the sports broadcasting game. He's one of my favorites, honestly, to watch. So I'm really looking forward to this interview. I love the guys on Sic'Em 365. I recommend if you don't know who they are. Most of you probably do, but if you don't, go check them out. I've got their Twitter handle scrolling at the bottom of the screen. And of course, they're on YouTube. They're just 365 Sports. Very easy to find. I hope you enjoy it. And I ask that if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to my channel. Share it with your friends. Let them know about Coos' Corner. I need you to spread the word. I need you to put comments underneath this video. Let me know what you think about Baylor. We're going to talk about the upcoming 2022 football season and what David thinks about it and the things to look for this season. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the upcoming season for Baylor. Without further ado, here's my interview with David Smoak. So I guess let's just jump right in. What is the biggest? Obviously, the biggest storyline to me for Baylor this year, David, is the quarterback position, and who's going to win that battle between Gerry Bohannon and Blake Shapen. What are your thoughts on who's going to win that job?
I still kind of go with the guy who's older, and Bohannon is, and he's also a guy that really kind of people just kind of migrate to him. Now, don't get me wrong. We saw what Blake Shapen could do when he came in against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game. That first half was almost as good as it could ever be. Then he hurt his shoulder, so he's kind of experienced some of that. I don't know what the plans are for spring drills. I don't think Blake had surgery. At least I don't believe he did. So that's a good thing. But, Bohannon is still just one of those guys that everyone, and again, part of playing a quarterback, yes, you want to be the prototypical quarterback and have the ability to run and throw, have a gun, be able to read defenses and all that. But there's a lot more to that as well that's inside of the locker room when it comes to leadership and team drills and, film sessions and all. And I think that always has been one of Gary's strengths, even when he was the backup for a long time to Charlie Brewer. So, there was a video of him earlier. In fact, it went kind of viral as he was, looks like he was squatting like some insane number, like 600 pounds or whatever.
Wow.
But then Shapen was in that same day. I mean, these guys are at it right now. This is that time of the year as spring drills were about to start. Shapen was doing like 500. And so they're both doing what they have to do in the off season. That was great that Shapen, you see him doing that because, if you had a big thing on your shoulder or harness or whatever that is when you've had rotator cuff, if that was the case, he wouldn't be able to do that. He looks fine, looks as good as, and I think that what it also allows them to do. So I'm still, a lot of people would probably be 50-50 if you would have asked them right after the season was over. Now let's just see what happens. But I do think the good news is these two guys will push each other. And then you have the young man in Kyron Drones, who's the high school state champion when he was a junior at Shadow Creek. He's just marinating along with the other guys. They're all just kind of, there's no pressure. Like, oh my God, there was no need to worry about the transfer portal. These are raw inside your own program pickups, and that always helps with the continuity as well.
Absolutely, yeah, that's great. Butler's in a great position, in my opinion. Not only in that room, but just throughout the whole team. Especially, I think Dave Aranda's got him moving in the right direction. Guy seems like a top-notch coach.
Yeah, and one of the other things, honestly, is the fact that it's this day and age with the transfer portal. It's not who you have; it's also who you want to keep. And you're gonna, there's always going to be some attrition. Baylor back in the day, about a decade ago, they had that run with Robert Griffin III, and then they had Nick Florence, and he had to kind of wait his turn. Although he was pushed into play early when Robert hurt his knee in 2000, I think it was 8. And then Florence and Bryce Petty had their competition. Bryce Petty had to wait, I think it was something like 1,500 days. He was initially committed to. He's the one that led him at quarterback to their two first Big 12 championships in 13 and 14, but he had to remain patient some 1,500 days. And I don't think one out of 100 players now would do that,
No.
quarterbacks. And so awesome to see that kind of patience. And Bryce even said he would probably do it again. He knew that if he waited his time, and it turned out being great for him, got drafted, played in the NFL a little bit, and now he's in the business profession. And so they're in pretty good shape, it appears, with what they have with Bohannon, what they have with Shapen, and also what they have coming through the system.
Right. Yeah, the transfer portal's eating a lot of teams. West Virginia's had a huge amount of attrition, as you know. That's my team. But Baylor seems to do a good job of holding on to their guys, man. I don't know what the magic is there. I guess it's just the culture.
It's winning. I think a little bit of both. I think one that you haven't reached too much. I mean, you're gonna have some misses. There's been guys that missed. I think this, and we discuss this a lot, especially covering Baylor with what they have now with men's basketball and what they've done with Rule, and then the transition, and then COVID and Aranda. There is something special, and it doesn't always stay. It doesn't always arrive. It doesn't mean it's at every program. You hear about strength and conditioning coaches. Who can get you to perform at the highest level in the off season as much as during the season, and do it right. And they all have their magic ways, and some work better than others. And then you move on to somebody else if the message gets old or there's a coaching change. But I will say this, no question, that they have had very few. Now, Charlie Brewer left because I think he was just kind of done. And Baylor kind of got that was just such a bad year, his fourth year. They lost R.J. Sneed to Colorado. They've had a couple of guys move on. But, I mean, they have, and I think it's because of, they're not going to get a lot of the 4- and 5-star guys. West Virginia could be in the same mix at times, and certain other schools. So there's not, and I'm not saying 4 and 5 guys are prima donnas or entitled, but there is some of that. It can be that way.
Sure.
Baylor does a great job of, to me, recruiting to fit. And they'll get better players and better recruits, but they can't get away from who is a good fit. And I think that allows them, and they might have more attrition at the end of next year. Who knows? But they have had as few, I guess is a better word, as most anybody. They've done a nice job of picking up a couple of key guys coming in when they have, but they just don't depend on it. And the other thing, and some of those guys, when they get a transfer, it's a transfer portal. He's good. He's done well. Siaka Ika, the tackle, we know how good he was. So they've been fortunate. I do think that there's something to do with maybe right now where Baylor is athletically across the board, and how young men or women, depending on the sports, and how they fit in the school.
Right. You talked about the transfer portal. Now, is Ika, is he coming? Is he back for another year?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then they went and got Jackson Player, right, from Tulsa.
I've known Jackson Player. Let's see. Yes, they did. First of all, defensive lineman, and he's a guy you never have to plug him in. You never. I mean, I'm talking about to get energy. He's like the ever ready battery. He's just gone. Now, Vince, he has as high a motor as anybody I've ever covered, and I'm not trying to over exaggerate that. I'll tell you why I know that. He played high school football at Midway, which is on the southern part of Waco, and I did their games for 10 years, and I do them now. And when he was at Midway, I mean, I don't compare them as talent because it's impossible to compare anybody to Aaron Donald. But I want to compare him, Jackson Player, with how active and his motor of what he is, kind of like in that version of you never see Aaron Donald take off a play. You never see him not give 100%. I mean, sometimes another guy across the other side of the line just beats you, and that's going to happen. Some guys are as good as you, and sometimes that day better than you. But he kind of reminds you of that version. Now, not comparing who Aaron Donald is as a Hall of Famer in the NFL, but he's got that kind of that quick twitch, that motor, and they did pick him up out of Tulsa, and they got him away from others who wanted him pretty badly. TCU, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. There's some big boy schools that wanted Jackson. What's interesting is they all wanted him after he had done what he did at Tulsa, but when he was coming out of high school, Tulsa was one of the actual best opportunities for him. And it's amazing. That's one of the things about the transfer portal. There's some good and there's bad, is that young men who come out of high school that weren't getting looks go play for, it could be an FCS team, but a group of 5 team, or maybe an FBS team, And then all of a sudden, people look at them 3-4 years later because of the upside and how they've grown. And then all of a sudden, they get a chance to go to some schools that otherwise did not give them 2 seconds back when they were coming out of high school.
Right. Yeah, that definitely is a positive. I think the high school kids are the ones who get hurt the most from the transfer portal because there are so many teams now they're pulling so many of their guys out of the portal that there's probably a lot of these high school kids get left hanging.
Yep,
That may have to
I
go
agree.
play it, and it's a lot of them may have to go play. Now it probably helps the smaller schools out there, the Division II schools and the FCS schools. They're probably benefiting from the portal somewhat by getting some guys that they might not would have gotten.
Well, yeah, I asked that question today to Max Olson from theathletic.com. I said, okay, so we know that the FCS schools, especially the Power Fives, are rating, and I mean rating. There's a lot of kids that get in the transfer portal with bad information, and they just get stuck there, and you never hear from them again. But one of the other things that we do see is, if someone's going to pluck guys away from the FBS for the Power Fives or the Group of Fives, well, then those schools have to come up with, maybe they get somebody from FBS. Somebody that maybe is an NAIA school, somebody that's a Division II guy. We see that with what Baylor's done in basketball with players who have been at Division III schools, at Fairmont State, and
Right.
I mean, you look at what Adam Flagner's doing. I mean, it's a pretty impressive list. There's some good talent. Sometimes they just get stuck in the behind whatever ratings, stars, recruitment, whatever. They get kind of stuck, and so it's good to see them. It's good to see them what they do once they have a chance to play, and then schools need something, they go find the next available talent.
Right. Right. Real quick too, I want to touch on Baylor's back to Baylor for a second. The running back room. I know they've lost obviously two great running backs in Abram Smith and Treston Ebner. Who's the lead candidate to take that number one role in the running back room?
That's a really good question. They have some young players. They had Williams. I just went blank on a couple of the names, to be honest with you. Hold on.
That's
They
okay.
have a couple of guys that didn't play. They have a young freshman, Jordan Jenkins, who was on a team of one of the bigger school in Texas, not the biggest school, but he had a monstrous senior year at Lindale High School. He's a banger. I mean, he's a big, big banger. That's going to be somebody you'll probably see when it comes to someone who didn't play at all last year, who redshirted. Yeah, they lose Abram Smith. Yes, they lose Treston Ebner. Tay McWilliams is someone that you'll see more of.
Okay.
It's always a wonder about, and I'm talking about more. They were using Josh Fleeks most of the time. Young man who came out of Dallas at Cedar Hill High School, played for Joey McGuire in high school. They were using him as more of a slot receiver, and he just never seemed to hit for whatever reason. But we've seen some smoke about him when it comes to what he's been doing with performances during the offseason, and there's thoughts they might move him that could end up being a Treston Ebner type player out of the backfield. But they'll be fine. But they have Tay McWilliams. Oh my God, I just went blank on another player. But they'll be fine. They're not gonna have Abram Smith. Abram Smith's a dog. I mean,
right.
that story with what they did with him is phenomenal because of what who he was, a linebacker turned running back. But the running back room, they're going to have to get somebody that kind of maybe plays better than they thought, or maybe is earlier ready than they thought. But I think they're going to be just fine at running back.
Do you think are there any positions they still need to fill from the portal, or do you think they're going to stick with what they've got?
Well, one of the things their tight end room is good. They go to those. They become a hell of a tight end heavy team, and also the H-back or fullback. The quarterback's fine. The offensive line, which has been on occasion for Baylor a nightmare. They were really solid back when Art Browse was here. They had Randy Clements, who was a longtime offensive line coach. He's now at North Texas. He's been at Florida State and a couple other places since he left Baylor. But they just had dude. They had old, excuse my language, grown ass men.
Yeah. I
mean, they had dudes that they got them from either transfers or junior college or out of high school and let them sit. And I mean, they would move tackles to guard and guards to center, and some of those guys ended up playing in the NFL. Not as perhaps effective once they got there as you would have thought, but they did flood the NFL with a lot of play. Everybody but Xavier Newman, who had a really, really nice year last year, every single offensive lineman is coming back and or decided they wanted to come back. Connor Galvin would most likely had a chance to get drafted. It would have been late in the NFL draft. He's back, and they've got Khalil Keith. He's a big young kid out of Alabama that really improved, and everybody on the offensive line that for a long time at times has been Baylor's issue. Mm-hmm. Even when Matt Rule's team went to the Sugar Bowl, even with some of the teams at the end of the Art Briles run, this is now what was their absolute weakness in 2000 and what would have been 20. They couldn't move anything. They couldn't block blocking dummies. And I'm not trying to be insulting. They just struggled.
Right.
If it was second down and 3, if it was third down and 1, you just wasn't going to happen. They just couldn't run the football. But in this case, every single buddy's back except Xavier Newman, who just ran out of eligibility. And he had a really, really nice Shrine Bowl game. And so I don't know if he's going to end up, getting drafted or not. He'll be in some NFL camp during the summer. That is without question. The defensive line, they'll be fine. Yes, the linebackers lose Terrell Bernard. They lose Jalen Pitre. I think the one position where they need some of the younger guys to step up and be a little bit better is going to be at the safety position with Jalen Pitre, who was more of a star, that star position.
Yeah.
He roamed all over the place. And then, of course, J.T. Woods, who had, 2 or 3 turnovers in the Sugar Bowl, had a really nice Senior Bowl. They'll have to kind of see what happens there. I think their secondary will be tested a little bit, but I think they're going to be fine with some of the guys coming back.
Awesome. Now, on their recruiting class, they have where they ranked right now according to Rival or whatever Rivals or 24/7, whoever you want to use. What's their rated ranking in recruiting right
one
now?
Of the things, and this is not dodging your question because I'm going to get to your question.
Uh-huh.
They're not. They've got, when you look at the class of 2023, which is of course those who are going to be seniors this upcoming year, they've got probably 3 or 4 stars. Yeah, that doesn't mean you're going to keep them. There's nobody that looks like a reach. There are players. They got players locally that are taking care of their backyard in Temple, Texas. They've got some Swiss Army knife types like Jalen Pitre. They've got the quarterback from near Austin, Austin Novosad, who's a tremendous player. Where they're ranked, I don't have all that in front of me as far as where they are compared to everybody else. They're going to be okay. Again, here's the thing. One of the things that I've always thought about, Justin, is that you still, at the end of the day, you're going to have Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU. It's going to be this Ohio State, right? Michigan. It's going to be the same ones.
Right.
And what you hope if you're West Virginia, if you can have a team that you get a class you can recruit. Like Baylor's got 9 guys. They're going to end up with probably between 18 and 22. I don't know who they have, as far as how the roster shakes down. But if they get inside the top 10, it's like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on? Art Briles, his last recruiting class was probably his best. And they had the guys like Katie Cannon and Kendall Wright. In the past, they had some, but they usually, if they were really pretty solid, like a 25 to 35, and I don't have the history of that. And honestly, that's just something that you're not going to see much of from Baylor. Now, with Dave Aranda and who he recruits, and because they're winning, you and I both know that the ratings, rankings, stars can sometimes be affected by who's the name on the jersey offering you the scholarship.
True. Very true.
And what Baylor has done, think about this, with their class that played in 2 Big 12 championships, won one of them, played in 2 Sugar Bowls and won one of them. Some of those guys that helped them get to that point, they were probably 2, 3 stars, maybe a handful of 4, not many.
Right.
So it's, what do you do when they get on campus? But they've got 4 stars right now. I don't know exactly what the national things say, or if it's Rivals, or if it's, Scout, or whoever they are, 247. But they seem to have a pretty nice little chunk of at least setting the tone for what should be I would say perhaps a top 30 class by sometime next year, or in December when they sign, or February.
Right. Yeah, I looked at all that back in December during the first signing day, but and I think Baylor, West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma State were all kind of right there, pretty close together as far as their rankings. They were all like in the 30s.
I mean, and sometimes. Like in Baylor, I think finished 30 when it comes to Rivals. I don't, maybe 1 or 2 higher or lower. Here's one of the things I know. And even if Baylor got or received 2 or 3 more really nice commitments between now and the next 2 or 3 months, which they probably will, and then they get close to the summer and they get 2 or 3 more, the schools that it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of what it's like. It's when you go to cook something in deep oil, hot oil, right? There's certain things it's done when it flows to the top,
right?
Whatever it might be. And eventually we know at the end of the time, no matter who it is, you can name them. A&M this year had that great class. Alabama every year. And you'll very rarely see somebody slide up.
Right.
Kentucky this year had a top 15 class. Indiana had a top 15 class. Mississippi State, Missouri. You'll see that on occasion, but rarely do you see that. Very rarely do you see many of them penetrate the top 10 or 15.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's just the nature of the beast, and it's probably not going to get any better with NIL. I wouldn't think.
No.
Because it's just going to be the rich get richer type scenario, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't know how this was going to work, and I think it's already kind of lost I think it's already kind of become the Wild West, and I think everyone thought, hey, that's a pretty good idea. Let's recruit you, and you come on campus, and then we'll have businesses who approach you. It's not even doing that. People are just, like, I say blatantly because, hell, it's legal.
Yeah.
Just blatantly going, no, hey, come here. You get, like Texas has that fund for offensive linemen that completely flipped their switch when they were, they had a pretty decent class. Texas is always going to have a tremendous recruiting class. But what has it done for them the last decade? Nothing.
Exactly.
But all of a sudden, now you have the name on the jersey, the logo on your helmet, and then you could also now outwardly do things with foundations and NIL and whatever else. Yeah, it's only going to make them stronger. It can help the next level, a West Virginia and Iowa State, a Baylor or whoever, but it's not going to help as much as the other guys who just have more money.
Right.
They have larger fan bases. So, and then you have, like, for example, Baylor, they got now an enrollment of 20,000. They used to not have 13 or 14. So they're getting bigger. A lot of the success in sports and athletics has helped. Some of what they're doing academically, of course, with now an R1 institution, that helps. But yeah, they'll be fine. I trusted this with Art Briles on. They got fits of who fit what they did on, especially on offense. Then they started getting better guys on defense. What Matt Rule got were kind of that tough-minded guys who helped him win the last year and help win in his third year. And now Dave Aranda, I think you'll see them get better defensive players. It used to be Baylor had all the bells and whistles on some offensive quarterbacks and wide receivers. I think Dave Aranda is going to get better defensive players because who wouldn't want to play for him or become someone that could be coached by him and the staff that he has after the way they played defense last year?
Absolutely. And I actually did a video, not just about Baylor, but about the whole Big 12 the other day. You still hear in the media, a lot of the media, Big 12 doesn't play defense. Big 12 doesn't play defense.
It's just stupid. It's the dumbest damn thing ever.
It is.
Excuse my language. And the thing is that Big 12 is now more playing better defense than the SEC. They've been invaded now by what the Big 12 used to be. Dave Aranda told me this one time. I was doing an interview with him, and I asked him, I said, okay, you guys are playing really good defense. What Matt Campbell brought to Iowa State, what Gary Patterson for the longest time did at TCU until he kind of lost control of that ship. What you see now from other Kansas State with Chris Kleiman, they're going to always kind of be that slug it out, and what West Virginia's done on occasion. I know the Mountaineers have, fans are a little bit edgy right now about who are we? What are we going to? What's our, and then of course, Oklahoma with the way they kind of changed a little bit defensively. Now that staff is done, and now they hire a defensive coach in Venables. UT, who knows? I mean, we don't, and we know they've got guys dripping with talent, but again, it doesn't always, translate on the football field. And so it's stupid. It's lazy. It's stupid. It's a terrible narrative. Anytime somebody, if the Big 12 has a high scoring game, oh my God, they don't play defense. And the high scoring games last year, I think on the first week, Texas beat Texas Tech 70-35. That used to be the norm. Now maybe not 70-35, but hell, We remember Baylor 61-58, West Virginia 70-63.
Yep.
We saw that more often. Now
Uh-huh.
that's the exception.
Exactly.
And now you see the SEC teams. Yeah, in the end, Georgia had an incredible defense. There's no question. Alabama's defense was beat up a little bit, but I do think that the Big 12, top to bottom now, plays better defense than anyone who thinks otherwise. Now, what Dave Aranda told me, it's the players who are recruited to the Big 12 defensively are going to have more success because of schemes, because of how you can scheme.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be many of the great just alpha dog, and I use that word too often. I mean the guys that you see them get off the bus or get off the airplane, or you see them get in the locker room or come onto the field that are just like, you, my God, look at who they are on the defensive line. That doesn't mean they don't have great linebackers and defensive backs, corners, and safeties. But what he was talking about to me was the defensive linemen in the SEC who are tripping with this just God-given talent.
Right.
Doesn't mean they don't work hard, but they can just go. Just pin your ears back and go on the defensive line, where the defensive linemen in the Big 12 are more successful because of how you set them up when it comes to being able to do what you need to do with schemes, and that's what he thought was probably the biggest difference.
Okay, that makes sense, actually, because when you look at the big hostels up front for Georgia and these SEC, I mean, like you said, they're the guys that get off the bus and you look and say that guy's a lineman, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of the defense. I mean, look at just for we use West Virginia as an example. I mean, Dante Steele. I mean, he's a physically impressive kid. Don't get me wrong, but you know, you wouldn't necessarily look at him and say that kid's a stud, right? But once you see him play, when you see him play, you see that he is a stud.
Yep,
But he may not look the part. And I mean, and an even better example of that was Darius Steele, his brother. Darius was not even highly recruited because they said he wasn't big enough, and now he's in the NFL. So I think it's all about, like you said, it's about developing the guys that you getting guys that blend into what you try to do and fit your culture. And I think that's how the Big 12 defenses are being so successful, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree. By the way, the one guy I was just drawing a blank. The Baylor running back position, I mentioned Tay McWilliams, who's going to get some carries. Quaylon Jones is a big, thick, 230-pound back. He got a little bit. He's a big, strong guy. I mentioned the young freshman and Jordan Jenkins, who will get more and more opportunities. I mentioned Josh Fleeks maybe moving into the running back position. So that was a couple of guys I just went absolutely blank when you asked me. There's also a guy that's so intriguing. Ever since he stepped on campus, he was a phenomenal playmaker in high school. His actual name is Craig Williams. He's had a lot of injuries. He's not very big. His nickname is Squirrel because that's kind of like he looks like a squirrel running up, in between cars or whatever.
Right.
But he's always been set back with a lot of injuries. He is somebody that if he can step up, he's got incredible speed, tremendous maneuverability, but he just never seems to be healthy. And of course, the best availability is availability, and that's not been the case with him. And that's another one of the names I forgot to mention.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I had I wasn't familiar with him, so I appreciate you bringing him up. Man, this has been awesome. I really love the info you've been able to give me about Baylor, and
I appreciate it. I appreciate you asking me. It's always appreciate that when somebody wants to hear anything I have to say.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, we're all Big 12 brethren. When that Texas and OU story popped in July, I think everybody else, the other 8 teams, no matter if you like them or not, whoever the rivals are or not, if they are, you kind of had to all kind of like a chain link. You had to put your arms and elbows together.
Absolutely.
Because who knew what the next step would be? And I think, as much as at times we could sit there and criticize Bob Bowlesby or what the hell the Big 12 was always, giving in to whatever Texas or Oklahoma wanted, one of the things that allowed to happen was, and you got to be careful because you never know what's the next thing of realignment. We always see, but the 8 teams said, the hell with them.
Yep.
Screw them, basically. Yeah, we're going to miss that money. We're going to miss some of the money. They're going to get some of that back. They're going to be okay with some of that. But we gotta be together, or we're not going to be anywhere. We're going to be just like disjointed, independent.
Yeah.
We're going to be group of 5. And I think it's great the way it's all come together.
I do too, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing the product on the field once all these new teams come in.
Well, And then the same year that you have this happen, Cincinnati's in the semifinals. They're coming.
Yes.
Brigham Young's always pretty damn good.
Yes.
They host Baylor next year. Baylor got them pretty good in Waco during 2021. And then, UCF, I think they're dangerous because of what they have and where they can recruit.
Yes.
The Houston, they're building a huge indoor facility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just built a huge indoor facility. They're going to build this big football operations, which is the newest thing,
Yep.
So these 4 teams coming in are committed and they're excited and they want to be a part of it. And I want someone who wants to be here, not somebody who always is well, we're a little bit better than you.
Right. Exactly. I totally agree. Well, David, man, once again, I really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. We'll have to do it again sometime, and I really look forward to watching. Hopefully, seeing you on 365 Sports tomorrow.
You too, buddy. Thanks for your time, man.
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
you as always.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
There you have it. I hope you really enjoyed my interview with David. Personally, I thought it was fantastic. He really gave us a lot of great information about Baylor, touched on the transfer portal, NIL. He actually got into more than I expected to. Awesome stuff. I really appreciate David jumping on here. Shout out to Joey Foster, good friend, for helping me link up with David Smoak. And listen, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. Please hit the like button on this video if you liked it. If you liked what David had to say, be sure to go check him out on Twitter at David Smoak and the 365 Sports page at Sic'Em 365 Radio. Check me out on Twitter at Coos206. I really appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, Q Country Roads.